Hello, 8th grade science students, and welcome to our lesson on motion. What is motion? Let's first look at this picture of this BMX bike rider. He's going over this ramp. How do we see the motion? Well, when they took this picture, they took a picture of each frame to show how he did the jump. Let's look and see what motion is. Motion is the change in position of an object over time. Motion is the change in position of an object over time. If we see this little character right here, he's walking this way. The change in position is him over here as the gray color, and it shows over time. Motion is the change in position over time. Pause to take notes. Some basic SI units that we'll be using to measure motion and velocity and speed, all those cool different things in this chapter. Let's look at some SI units. Length is measured in meters, mass is measured in the gram, and volume is measured in liters. Length, when we look at length, we look at a meter stick or centimeters or a yardstick. So think of your ruler. When we measure mass, we're looking at how heavy it is or how massive an object is. That's the weight. Remember, we use the triple beam balance to measure mass in grams. Volume, we use a graduated cylinder or a beaker or something that can carry liquid in for volume, and that's measured in a liter. Pause to take notes. Direction. When we look at motion, we see that, for example, when we looked at that BMX bike rider, he had a direction he was going. Was it north, south, east, or west? When we look at directions, we want to know which way that they were going and which way you travel. I always remember north, south, east, west by looking at the N and make an acronym that says never eat soggy Wheaties. So whenever you want to think of which directions, think of never eat soggy Wheaties. Again, never eat soggy Wheaties, and that's north, east, south, and west. Pause to take notes. To tell the position of an object, you need the reference point, the reference directions, and the distance. The reference point, we'll talk about that, reference direction and distance. So a reference point would be where you start from, where you're going, and how far you're going. And here's a cool little picture of a compass with north, south, east, west. Like never eat soggy Wheaties. Pause to take notes. The relative motion of an object depends on the frame of reference you use. Relative motion is the motion of the object. Depends on where you start from, where your frame of reference is. Pause to take notes. A reference point is a place or an object used for comparison to determine if something is in motion. A reference point, so you use that to determine if something's moving. A reference point, again, we're going to talk about reference point. A reference point is the location to which another location is compared. So, for example, this person that's walking, they're going to use the tree or the puppy as a reference point to know where, if they're moving or if the puppy's moving, it's the location which another location is compared. A reference point is really important for motion because we look at where a location of another object is and how you compare those. For example, in a race, my fixed point where you start out or your reference point is a starting line, just like on this picture here. They have a starting line. That's their reference point. If I run a race, I move away from the start line or the reference point towards the finish line. So there's a change in the distance between me and the starting line. So what is the reference point for this example? The starting line. A reference point is where you start at to compare if you've traveled or not. If you start at the starting line and you travel towards the finish line, there's a big change. There's a change in distance between where you started and where you're going to end up at. When we talk about reference points, it's really important to use words such as over, under, below, and above to describe reference points. We'll talk about more words to describe reference points, but make sure you use those academic words too. So in this example here of the flagpole and the bike and the tree, I said that the flagpole is below the bicycle. The tree is to the right of the flagpole, and the tree hangs over the sidewalk here. You can also use your directions like north, south, east, and west as academic terms to describe reference point. Okay guys, thank you. Make sure you take your notes. Have a good night.